Hello, this is Alan Shipnuck back for another Fire Drill podcast. We have a very intriguing guest today, but before we get to him, a quick word of thanks to our sponsors. Making these podcasts, doing journalism in general takes resources. We're very grateful for those who help us at the Fire Pit Collective keep the lights on. So thank you to Par Points, the most interesting golf scoring app there is. You've heard us talk about it before. It just makes the game a little different, a little more fun. Awesome for families, buddies trips, or if you just want to shake things up and make it a little bit different. Go to the App Store and download Par Points. You will not regret it. And Dormy Workshop, they make beautiful handcrafted leather goods. If you go to firepitcollective.com and you click on the Pit Shop, that where we sell all our logoed stuff, there's some really neat collaborations between us and Dormy. And check out Dormy's own website. They have all kinds of things that you might enjoy and will improve your life in some small way. So check it out. Now to our guest today, PGA Tour veteran James Hahn. James, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We're gonna, talk about some interesting topics and looking forward to the fireworks.
I thought we were just going to talk about Cal golf, but okay, sure. Fine.
Yeah, sure.
You talked me into it. Well, all right. So James, for most of your career, you've been known by your slightly quirky biography, former shoe salesman, and then you're known as a guy who was winning tournaments on big time courses, Riviera and Quail Hollow. And, you've been out there a decade now. And this year you've morphed into a unicorn. You are the rare PGA Tour player who's publicly supportive of LIV. And you staked out some cutting edge positions on Twitter. So walk me through this evolution. I mean, obviously these the Premier Golf League and then the Saudi Golf League, then LIV Golf, this stuff has been knocking around for a while, and but very quickly people had to choose sides. So at what point did you realize you wanted to try and be either a peacemaker or at least a voice of reason in the professional golf world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I do have a lot of friends that play on the LIV Tour. I have a lot of friends that play on the PGA Tour. I have friends that are supportive of both. I have friends that, hate the LIV Tour, and I have, friends that love both tours. And so for me, how I got into this was basically, the pot calling the kettle black or something along those lines, is that it was so one-sided, right? That as soon as the LIV came out and people were deflecting and going to that tour, that we were throwing these guys under the bus. We were calling them names, just saying everything that we can to have people support their views of how they see the LIV Tour, right? And so for us as a player, as a person that's inside the bubble, it was another player who decided to go to another tour for a better opportunity in their eyes financially, right? And so, we can go through all the different narratives of, people saying, if so-and-so said that they were leaving for the money, I would respect them a lot more, things like that. And so, and then for me as a player, I've more or less considered, what my number would be if I decided to go to LIV, or everyone has a number, we're in the locker room. It's like, well, what's your number? What's your number? Everyone's got a number, right? And
what's your number?
Or some people have a number so big that it's just unreasonable, right?
Yes. Wait, tell us your number now. What you've been talking? We need a number. Come on, give us a number.
No, I can't tell you my number. It's definitely in the millions, right? But for me, it's what am I giving up, right? So I'm
right.
On that topic, I would like to play the Champions Tour. I'd like to play further along in my career as long as I can. And so right now, it seems like you either have to pick one tour or the other. I feel like, after the lawsuit next year, who knows what can happen? Can someone play both tours? And so I'm sure we'll talk about that more in depth. In the next few minutes.
I've always felt like that, and I've been to a handful of the LIV events, and of course I've been to many PGA Tour events, and I feel like that's the player's dream, right? Is you could keep your tour membership, you could play your favorite events, and you could cherry pick some of the LIV tournaments. Like that is what everyone would love to have, no matter what they say publicly, right? Am I correct in
Right.
that thinking?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so that's another thing of I'm glad you brought it up. Of uh, for example, Patrick Reed playing in all these events, and everyone saying, oh, I thought they wanted to play less events. I thought they wanted to play less. That was one of their reasons, spend more time with the family. And I understand that, but you could, you know, the other side of it is there's a lot of weeks throughout the year that we play golf and that we enjoy playing and we love competing, right? And so 14 tournaments to work only 14 weeks out of the year, I feel like might not be enough. Some of these guys love to compete and they miss the competition. But to be obligated to play, 25, 30 events a year, if you're trying to play both tours, I feel like is unreasonable. And so, everyone's saying, play less golf tournaments. And yeah, we average like 25 to 28 tournaments. Yeah, I mean, 14 tournaments is less than 25, but guess what? So is 15, so is 16, so is 17, So it's like every one of these tournaments that they add is still under the average that they would have had in the past few years and the years going forward.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Liv has been very clear to say if you join us, you have to play all our tournaments, but we don't care what you do in the other weeks. You can play anywhere you want. I mean, they're
Right.
trying to make it clear that their players have that freedom to go to the
Right.
European Tour, go to the PGA Tour, whatever they can finagle. So, yeah, I
Right.
mean, even Tiger or Jack in their prime when they had played limited schedules to try and be competitively hungry. I mean, they were playing 17, 18, 19. 14 that's probably not enough to really be sharp. So I
Right.
think
And
I
it's
think you're right
it's
about that.
also very ironic that we're calling out the live players and well now they're employees, they have to play these 14 events. Well, guess what? The PGA Tour rolled out here. I think it goes into effect this season. Is that in order for someone to um, be eligible for the PIP money, is that they are obligated to play in 20 events this season, right? Which includes the majors, the playoffs, elevated events. And so it's almost like the PGA Tour saying, oh, 14 events, well, we'll one up you and we'll go 20 events. And so to me, it's like, it's very hypocritical for us to call out live players for doing this when now we are almost doing the exact same thing. And so
Right.
that's where I feel like the narrative is kind of shifted. It's like, well, before Rory was saying, about the world ranking points, if they decided to leave, so they shouldn't get any world ranking points, this and that. And he's so one sided. And then 2 months later, he's saying, well, if Dustin Johnson's ranked over 100 in the world, then it's not a true reflection of how good of a golfer he is. And therefore, the world ranking system is not fair.
Yeah. I'm curious, how much blowback have you gotten from your colleagues or even some of the minders in Ponte Vedra Beach for your public statements that are supportive of Live?
Yeah. The people that get paychecks from the PGA Tour at Ponte Vedra, for the most part, they understand that I have a voice, that I have my own views that they might not necessarily agree on, and it's they're very respectful of it. They listen, but they also question like, well, what are some of the things that we can do differently to better the PGA Tour, right? And so now they're rolling out with all these things, incentives for us to play on the PGA Tour. As far as players, caddies, club reps, fans, I can't tell you how many people in person have come up to me and said, thank you for finally saying what people want to say, but they might not necessarily have the platform or have the courage to say, because there is a lot of backlash for that I'm getting just for not really being in support of Live, but not against Live, right? It's almost like
Right.
if you're not against Live, then you're for Live. And if you're for Live, that means you're against the PGA Tour. It's like connecting the dots, right? And so it's gotten so political at this point that you either have to pick a side between left and right, and if you're in the middle, then you're wrong altogether, right? So I feel like I'd hate for us to live in a world where we're so divided between Live and PGA Tour, and it just ruins the game because it's ruining politics, it's ruining families, it's ruining friendships. I'd like to see a world where they possibly, get together and coexist, but I feel like the anti-Live fans and golfers are against that idea.
Yes, well, you're an idealist, James. I respect it, but it's hard to maintain that innocence. But at the same time, this podcast is really an outgrowth of of some Twitter exchanges we had in the last few days, and you did brand me anti-live, which I don't think is quite accurate. I've tried to be very much down the middle, and whenever I get it from both sides. You're a PGA Tour shill or you're a live hater. Like I kind of, it's almost 50-50. I think people calling me, calling me out on both sides, which I think tells me I'm probably doing my job somewhat
Right.
effectively. I mean, like the folks at LIV Golf have told me to my face, like, thank you for your coverage. We appreciate you having an open mind and being fair. So I'm like, geez, maybe I'm being too soft on them. But yeah, so, but you're right. If you try and play it down the middle, then everyone's mad at you. It's almost easier
Right.
to just pick a side and stand on the
Decide.
rooftops and shout, which is what a lot of obviously other people in the golf media are doing. But I'm trying to avoid
Absolutely.
that and bring a little subtlety to the conversation, but it can get lost.
And I do respect that you do play down the middle. You're getting it from both sides, which pretty much means that you're doing it the right way. I mean, I remember, even a few months back that, even talking about live or promoting live or even showing anything good about live was a no-no, right? Like it was, the PGA Tour and only the PGA Tour. And if you talk about the Live Tour in a good way, then you're against us. You're not in the boys' club, right? And so how things have changed is like when Brooks Koepka just won this last week. You see journalists and reporters congratulating Brooks Koepka on another win on his winless drought and all this stuff. It's changing to where it's normalizing the live tour in the golf ecosystem. And
Right.
so before it, I like to compare things. I like a lot of like analogies and stuff, but it's almost like Tesla when they first came out, right? When Tesla first came out, everyone was like, "Oh, they're not gonna, they're not gonna be successful." Even 3 or 4, I remember having a conversation with my financial advisor. I said, "Hey, what do you think about adding Tesla to my portfolio?" And he's like, "Oh, they're gonna go under in the next few years. Oh, I would never recommend investing in Tesla and this and that." And now it's normal to where it's kind of cool to have a Tesla. Like, let's be honest, right?
Right.
And so I feel like we're kind of in the beginning stages of that, where live golf, it's live versus PGA Tour, but 2, 3, 5 years down the road, we could actually be in an environment where it's kind of cool to watch both on TV.
Well, so the critics of Live Golf would say that the normalizing is the problem. That is the entire reason that this exists. Is the Saudi Arabian government is trying to normalize its relationships with the Western world, and that is the ultimate goal of sports washing. And so, people have. I get this a lot. You shouldn't even report on it. You shouldn't even talk about it because you're normalizing it, and it's a valid critique given who's providing the money. My rebuttal is it's just one of the biggest stories in golf this century. And in my position, I can't ignore it. There's just too much at stake here for the game. And it's just too big a story. But, that would be your rebuttal to that? That even by talking about live and saying, I think it has some merit that you're serving as an agent of propaganda for Saudi Arabia.
That's a great question. That's something that I've been thinking about, and I kind of knew you were going to ask that question. It is a big issue. I'm not going to deny it. The human rights problems that they have in Saudi Arabia. If there is any chance that the government, the people that are the Saudi Golf Fund, right, that is sponsoring the live or putting money into the live, if that has any influence on how they proceed as a country and make being able to change their human rights regulations in their country, if that has any positive influence for their country on whether or not they've invested billions of dollars into this live golf, and if something bad happens, I'm sure the first thing that goes through their mind is not thinking like, oh, I wonder how our LIV Golf fans are going to handle this or going to take this. We need to make a really good decision here because we can't lose our fan base. But if there's any like even a 1% of them even considering that, then could you say that LIV Golf may or may not have a positive influence on the human rights in Saudi Arabia? Does that make any sense? I'm having a hard time with my words, but if
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, from the standpoint, the people who say, well, this, what if MBS wakes up tomorrow and he doesn't want to waste any more money on golf and LIV will just blow away like tumbleweed? And my rebuttal is the guys who run the public investment fund in Saudi Arabia are probably the most powerful people on the planet who are not heads of state. And their top two guys have been at every LIV event. It's His Excellency Yasser Al Rumayyan and then his deputy, this guy named Majid. And they play in the pro-ams and they zip around in their cart and they'll play a couple holes with Dustin, they'll play a couple holes with Phil, a couple holes with Bryce, and like they're having the greatest time of their life. And they're on the first tee and they're dapping up the players, and you can see the joy this has brought them to be in this inner circle and to get this acceptance. And who knows what quiet conversations are happening, whether it's with former President Trump or it's just captains of industry who come out and play in the Pro-Am. And so they have bought access to the Western world in a way that they've always craved. And it's hard to put a price tag on that, but it has tremendous value. And on an interpersonal level, every Tuesday night at the tournaments, they host a party, and the players come and they're drinking 2,000 Bordeaux's and they're having a great time. And these guys are the center of it all. And so now as they go out into the world as these representatives of the Saudi Arabian government, like they have been exposed to a lot of culture in the United States, in England at the Centurion Club, wherever they've gone, and they've been the toast of the town. And so I think in that regard, those two men who run the PIF could have, I could see where LIV has affected their thinking, and they don't want this party to end. They don't want the public investment fund or their government to do something so bad that all of a sudden they're so toxic they can't be on the first tee anymore, and they can't play with Trump at Bedminster, and they can't do all these things that they're enjoying. And so again, these guys hold all the cards in global finances, and so to see how much joy LIV Golf has brought them, I really think that what you're saying there is some merit there, just on an interpersonal level. Now. I don't think the MBS. Oh, go ahead.
I also feel like it goes both ways, right? And so not only have they bought into our Western world and our way of thinking, but we've also infiltrated, their inner circle, right? Mickelson has an opportunity to talk to His Excellency on a weekly basis if he wanted to, on a daily basis, right? Like we've gone into, their men's club, right? And so for me, I'm 41 years old, and I grew up listening to a lot of hip hop and rap growing up, right? And so one of the things that I still remember to this day was there was a clip of Tupac Shakur. He's a rapper back in the days. A lot of the young kids won't remember him, but this dude was legit.
Oh, come on. Everyone knows Tupac.
Everybody knows Tupac. Okay, I don't know. I mean, the younger kids these days, they still play it on the radio, but he was like way before his time. But anyways, they asked him, I believe it was when, Bush Sr. was in office, and they had asked him, if Bush invited you to the White House, would you go, right? And in the past few years, in the Trump era, that, a lot of athletes were asked to go to the White House. And as you know, that all of them decided not to go to the White House, and for me, I always go back to this Tupac quote, and he goes, why wouldn't I go to the White House? He goes, I have an opportunity to talk to the man in charge, to talk to the president and tell him the problems of the inner city and all the problems that I have that are, in this world that he has an opportunity to change. He goes, well, so why wouldn't I want a one-on-one conversation with the man, right? And so for our athletes to turn down the opportunity to talk to Trump and, not to get political, but if there's even an opportunity to have him think about some of the things that he's doing and some of the things that he will do in the future, I feel like goes the same way with His Excellency in Saudi Arabia. We have an opportunity to possibly help him make the right decisions going forward. It's like the movie Inception. Like we're in it right now, in a dream and a dream and a dream like we're in it and we're so close. I mean, how awesome would it be if 10 years from now, right, the human rights gets better, and this is me just being very optimist, right? 10 years from now, the human rights getting better, just on a scale between like women's rights to just everything. I don't want to name too many things, but and for them to change, and then asking him 10 years from now, saying, what changed your mind? And him saying possibly, I played a golf round with Dustin Johnson, and he seemed bothered by it, and I felt like I needed to do something. Like that would be pretty cool, right? I don't know if that's going to happen, but the fact that there's even an opportunity for that to happen, I feel like, there's a good. I think, the risk outweighs the reward. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to imagine Phil Mickelson setting the global financial markets during the Pro-Am at a LIV event by whispering in the ear of His Excellency. But I mean, I wouldn't put it past Phil for sure. And yeah, I mean, again, it's a very philosophical question. I mean, can sport be an agent of change? I think most people would say yes. I did a big story on Masai Ujiri. He was the GM or still is, of the Raptors, and he founded this thing called Giants of Africa, and he's brought hundreds and hundreds of kids over to play college basketball from the continent of Africa. Wow. And some of them have gone on to play pro ball. Many have gotten into executive positions and done great things in their lives that have nothing to do with basketball. And he's won an NBA title as a GM, but that organization means more to him than anything, and it really has affected the trickle-down effect from how all these kids' lives have changed and what it's done for their families, what it's done for their own kids, and it's very powerful. And of course, there's many other examples, whether it's youth on course or it's the first tee. I mean, I think generally we accept that sports can be an agent of change. So the question is can a place like Saudi Arabia evolve through sport? I mean, it's an unknown, and I think you have to be a little bit of a dreamer to at the current moment, but you just have to chip away at these things. So maybe the answer is yes, and maybe LIV Golf plays a role. And but that is a hotly contested idea in this context. But I Tupac is right on some level. You got to go talk to the man.
Got to talk to the man
and hear what he has to say. Side note, I was the first guy on the Slingers High basketball team to discover NWA.
What?
Yes, no, hip hop has always been
That's so awesome. Good for
thing.
you.
But to me, those guys were incredible journalists. Like what they taught listeners everywhere about real life was powerful. And so, there's interacting with different cultures and seeing the world is a powerful tool. And so whether it's music,
I mean, it's also like, I don't see it going, if you were played devil's advocate, I don't see it going the other way. I don't see His Excellency having a conversation with Phil and all of a sudden being so pissed off that he's going to raise gas prices and, do what he's doing in his country tenfold. Right. And so, I see it from both directions. One of the things that I was also thinking about is when people criticize the players who are suing the PGA Tour, right? And so, there's a narrative of, I would be okay if they just didn't sue the PGA Tour. Right. My response to that is they're not suing the tour for monetary damages. They're not suing them for millions and millions of dollars. They're just suing them for the right to play golf. And so my rebuttal to that is, we're allowing football players. Tony Romo played in one of the events. Jerry Rice played in a professional event. We had a retired tennis player, Marty Fish, just playing the 3M Open here a few months back. And so we're allowing non-golfers, right, non-professional golfers to compete in a professional golf event, taking away a spot from someone who could be eligible or would be more deserving of that spot. But yet we won't invite Dustin Johnson or Brooks Koepka or Bryson DeChambeau into a golf tournament. We can't invite Kevin Na, who's a two-time past champion of the Shriners Hospital Open, and they're just fighting for their right to be invited into a golf tournament. And so we'll find out later or early next year of how that pans out. And so, that's just one of the big topics as well of kind of where we are right now in golf.
Yeah, I mean the battle between not only the tours but also players within the system. Like, let me read a quote that you had that I thought was really interesting, and I want to get into this. You said, "The secret meeting with Tiger and Rory set a precedent that the top 20 players can get whoever they want from the tour, can get whatever they want from the tour. So what's stopping the other 90% of our tour from getting together and doing the same exact thing as Rory and Tiger and saying the top 20 players can go play their own tournaments, but the rest of the tour, us 90%, stand together and we want more benefits? I feel like a portion of the $100 million could have gone to making the tour great rather than going to the top 20. These are little things that irritate the rest of the membership to the point there's a lot of animosity between the haves and the have-nots." I would call it the haves and the have-mores, but
yes, if I had to redo that statement, that's the one thing that people are clear. It's and when you're doing an interview, just stuff comes out of your mind. And I should have said haves and have-mores. You're absolutely right.
But the larger point is true that the PGA Tour has now created this caste system where the top 20 guys, or maybe a few more, but the elite have access to incredible amounts of money, and everyone else is getting some benefit. But even the $500,000, you have to play really bad on the PGA Tour not to make $500,000 in earnings. Even a crappy year, you're going to scrape it around and make something close to that. So that's not really free money. That's just an advance. I mean, it's helpful for sure, especially for young players or struggling guys. You can pay your coach, and you can, like, it has benefit. There's no question, but it's not really free money like the PIP or something.
And even the $500,000 isn't $500,000 net. You know what I mean? It's like, we have $250,000 worth of expenses, and then we're also having to pay taxes on that. So it's like, all said and done, some of the guys are making just over $150,000 if you're making $500,000 on the PGA Tour. And so that also stemmed from a little bit of frustration, I guess, from the things behind the scenes that fans and reporters are not aware of. So I'll give you an example. In Napa this year, as well as the Sanderson Farms golf tournament, we had to pay for our own rental car for the week, right? And so 2 tournaments that are non-elite, right? I don't ever remember going to a Players Championship, a Bay Hill, even Tigers tournament, and having to rent my own car, right? And it's, for me, is that they've set a standard on the PGA Tour. When you fly in, we're going to have transportation ready for you. We'll have a courtesy car, whether it's a BMW, Lexus, a Cadillac, or even sometimes where they do rent cars for us, but they pay for it and they have it waiting for us outside. It's very convenient for us, right? And so to have a standard on the PGA Tour and have that standard taken away from you, I feel like is a blow to the tour. But to also question why, and it's a question about, who's paying it, where's the money coming from? We can't afford, the sponsor can't afford, the tournament can't afford having courtesy cars, but then seeing a big chunk of money, $100 million, going to the top 20 golfers on our tour, as far as popularity, right?
Right.
I mean, I always bring it back to when, I've heard people say, well, if you want a part of the $100 million, just play better, right? It's a meritocracy. Just play better. Just play better. It's funny that Patrick Cantlay played the best out of any PGA Tour golfer the year that he won the FedEx Cup, won the Super Bowl of our tour, and didn't get $1 from the PIP program. And so, what part of play better fixes that portion of where that money is allocated towards, or who it's allocated towards? So to me, it's like I don't understand it.
Well, so my question to you is, like, how widespread is the discontent among, let's say, the rank and file, the PGA Tour, the guys who are not in the top 20? I mean, is there a lot of unhappiness with the current state and the changes that the tour have made?
Uh, so when you have a couple people negotiating for the 20 guys, right? And the 20 guys isn't just the 20 guys, it's the 30 to 40 guys that could potentially move into the top 20, right?
Right.
And so for these 40 guys, for a few individuals to make the rules for the entire group, is going to be some disagreements on how far they feel like they should go. So, for example, for the new PIP program, they're obligated to play in these 20 events. Well, I can tell you that without naming names, at least 5 to 10 guys that don't really agree with that. They're like, well, I don't want to be obligated to play in these elevated events. I want to be able to pick my own schedule. That's why we're independent contractors, and being able to do what I want to do. If it's my daughter's graduation week, I don't want to have to play in this golf tournament, which, then it comes to like the next process is, well, what's the penalty for missing this event? Well, not only do you not get PIP money or you get a reduced amount, there should be some kind of consequence, because like we're providing so much money up front that we're almost guaranteeing a certain product. And if you don't provide that product, like what are the repercussions? And so now we're at a point where like we're still conflicted on what this new product will be. But yeah, there are a lot of people that are not happy with the new product that were in that secret meeting. And I only call it secret meeting because that's kind of what it's been labeled these days.
Oh no, it's a great term.
Okay.
But you mentioned the 90%. I mean, this is actually something that Phil has been harping on forever, is that the superstars drive the game, but they're outvoted by the rank and file. There's a lot more guys who are 50 to 150 on the money list than there are top players, and that there's the everyday tour player has an outsized influence because there's just more of them. And so obviously what Tiger and Rory did in their secret meeting kind of put a lie to that, where the superstars can exert their influence. But you mentioned the silent majority, the 90%. I mean, why don't you guys unionize? That's an idea that's been kicked around forever. And golf is really the only sport where the players don't have a union to advocate for them. So why not?
Right. I mean, that's a $1 million question right there. I mean, there are people that have considered, but golf is such an individual sport. It's hard to get all. I think there's over 200, close to 300 members. To get all 300 members to agree on a certain topic and to make everyone happy, because you have to, in order for that to be effective, Rory would need to agree on certain topics that, I'm only saying his name, I'm not calling him out, but like Greg Chalmers, for example, right? Like they would have to agree on kind of how the money's being distributed. And obviously one is, possibly number one in the world, and Greg Chalmers is, playing in few events because has conditional status. And so it's very hard to get all 300 people on the same page. Also, it's very expensive. But also that's what the purpose of the board is, the player director board, as well as the PAC. And we're supposed to represent the tour in the fairest way that we can. And, for the most part, I feel like they're doing a good job. It's just something rubs me a wrong way when the PAC, as well as the player advisory board, agree on a certain topic, and then Rory, Tiger, and the secret meeting happens and throws a wrench into our plans, and all of a sudden everything that we've been working on the previous 2 or 3 months is scrapped from the board, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, no, it's the secret, out of the secret meeting, this elite group of golfers want something different, so now we're going to change what we're going to come out with and satisfy what they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's almost like 2 meetings going on, one with the actual players and one with the commissioner and the secret meeting.
Yeah. No, I mean, those guys just kind of subverted the entire process. And Monahan, because he wants to keep his job, like he said, okay, great, I have rubber stamp that. I love that idea. Boom, this policy. Like,
right.
It was a very unusual situation. That's why it was so interesting. I mean, and even we can all agree that Tiger Woods has had an incredible influence on the sport. But does it make sense for him to have any say in the future of the tour? Because he's not even going to participate in it, really. I mean, it's clear that his playing days are very limited. So it's funny that Tiger, of all people, is in charge in some ways when, you know, he has very few events in his future. So,
and so it's also like, you know, we've created this PIP to prevent guys from going to the LIV Tour, to give them more guaranteed money. And Tiger had won the PIP last year without ever playing in a golf tournament. And so it's like a royalty going to him of like, this is, you know, thank you for all that you've done over the years. And we're sorry that you feel like haven't capitalized financially on all the opportunities these last 20 years. And so we're going to make that up to you by giving you this guaranteed money, in hopes of you staying on the PGA Tour and you continuing your legacy. But, you know, no other sports league does that. Like, I don't think the NBA pays Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, all these like star athletes over the years and say, hey, thank you that what you've done over the years. Here's, you know, a percentage of our company here moving forward for, you know, for at the end of time. Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
Sounds a little bit like socialism. I don't know how that's going to play in the locker room. You know, the guys who watch Fox News, they don't like socialism. We're just giving Tiger free money for doing nothing, man. Like,
right. That's going to be a tough one. But you know, on hindsight, I do agree that, you know, Tiger, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be playing for the amount of money that we're playing for if it wasn't for Tiger. So yes, reward him with something. But to give away $100 million a year, I feel like is a lot.
How much unhappiness is there among the tour membership that, you know, all of a sudden LIV shows up and the tour just turns a spigot on and millions of dollars are flowing out of the reserve fund and they're squeezing sponsors? It's like, wow, you know, I mean, I think it's like, oh, we just found $200 million in the couch cushions, guys. Like, sorry, we've been sitting on this for all these years. Here you go. Here's the money you deserve. Like,
that was one of the biggest, you know, biggest things to come out of the whole LIV, this whole experiment that we're in, is that, you know, we're being trained and taught and, you know, molded to dislike the LIV Tour. But as a PGA Tour player, what they've done to our tour this year, next year, moving forward is amazing, right? We're playing for more money now than we've ever have. We've accelerated our growth into the purses to be able to keep our players, right? We've come out with $100 million PIP program for the top players on our tour. And so, you know, you can kind of argue without the LIV Tour, we wouldn't have all these things. We would still be playing for the purses that grow incrementally from the previous year, but we wouldn't be playing for $100 million in the PIP. We wouldn't be playing for $25 million in the Players Championship. We wouldn't be playing for $20 million in Tiger's event at Riviera. And so, you know, in hindsight, they've actually made our tour a lot better.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's Phil Mickelson's that's his whole position. Is like even before LIV launched, was that the tour's not doing enough for the players, and you know, I think in some ways he's been vindicated in all this. What is your take on the rise and fall and rise again of Phil Mickelson through this whole process?
Yeah, that's man. Personally, you know, I've been able to play with Phil several times on the PGA Tour. I think my personal experiences with him have always been great. You know, same with Bryson, same with Brooks. Those guys, they speak their mind. They're your non-traditional PGA Tour member that if they have any problems with the tour, that they are free to speak their mind and kind of tell you where they're coming from and back it up with real facts. And, you know, it just kind of makes you see the other side of professional golf, right? I mean, there's this whole exercise, there's good and bad about of what happens on the PGA Tour. You know, Mickelson and the LIV Tour, you know, I don't think there was one bad thing that the PGA Tour has done ever. Right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like they were the golden child. Like, nothing that they do can ever be, you know, talked down upon, or like they're giving so much to charity. They're changing people's lives. You know, they're putting so much money into players' pockets and, you know, in charities and foundations and all that. But then now there's like a different side of it, and now it's like you're starting to see things unfold for both tours, but also the players that are involved.
Do you think Jay Monahan survives all of this?
I as a current board member, I cannot answer that question. Maybe in a couple months from now, when my time's up, I can probably give you a solid answer. But as far as we know, the tour is still surviving. We're having record numbers. We have kept the majority of the players on tour and the stars that we needed to keep. And so from that side of it, he stays on the as commissioner. I'm sure you can argue, and a lot of players have argued the other side of it, that could he have done more? Possibly. But when you're going against Greg Norman and the Saudi Golf Fund, and basically an unlimited reserve that they're sitting on, it's hard to compete against an entity like that.
Yeah, but the tour's done a good job competing. I mean, all the things we've talked about, like they've really, the money is flowing now. If these changes that have happened in the last few months, if they had happened a year earlier before LIV had launched, you probably could have held on to some of your players, right? And to me, that's where the Monday morning quarterbacking comes about, is that Monahan didn't seem to take the threat seriously enough, or he didn't act fast enough. Like, because clearly fundamental change can be brought to the PGA Tour quickly. It happened in a week. There was a meeting in Delaware, and then boom, we're at the Tour Championship, and here's all the new changes. Like, It happened almost overnight. So if he had done that a year earlier, I think you absolutely could have blunted LIV's momentum in a huge way.
Right.
Am I right about that?
Absolutely. I mean, the one of the biggest critiques about what we've done, as well as the decisions that Jay has made, is that we're very reactive. We're waiting for them to make a move, and then we react to it. And then we wait for them to make another move, and then we react to it. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, if we had come out with this PIP program 2 years earlier, could we have saved some of the players? Possibly. I mean, we don't know. It's hindsight's 2020. But the fact that we've lost some of these big stars, in hindsight also, that I think if we would have come out with the PIP program a few years earlier, guys like Dustin, Bryson, Brooks would have gone anyways, just their number would have been exponentially larger. You know what I mean? Because they basically have to outbid the PGA Tour in keeping these players, and they have an unlimited fund. And so if DJ's career earnings were projected to be $200 million after the PIP program and the purse increases, I'm sure the Saudis would have just written him a check for $400 million and just not even bat an eye. Our grass prices would have gone up a little bit. Uber prices would have gone up a little bit. But, that's just how it is. Right. And so
that's a dark thought, that our gas prices are tied to LIV signing.
They need to recoup their money. Let's be honest. Right. But yeah, if they were going to come out with this tour eventually, they were ready. It was time. And all they needed to do was, what's everyone's number, right? Alan, what's your number? James, what's your number? Everyone's got a number, and they just keep bidding back and forth until someone reaches that number. And then you start telling everybody, hey, we got so-and-so on board. Who's next? They're willing to write these checks.
I mean, the thing about the number that's interesting is, and I think this is one of Monahan's miscalculations, is that he might have overvalued what the PGA Tour means to some of its players. Like, to me, I would say, if I'm James Hahn, I want to go back to Riviera for the rest of my life. I want to go back to Quail Hollow. These are the greatest weeks of your life. Instead of playing, in the middle of nowhere in Saudi Arabia with no fans. Like, the energy at the LA Open is off the charts. And
Yes.
And you've got, every time you walk up the 18th fairway, you're going to remember what you did. And like, to me, that has so much value. But obviously, maybe we over romanticize this, because a lot of the players were just happy to take the money and walk away from the tour and their favorite tournaments, and, the volunteers that they've known for 20 years, and the houses they stayed in, all these things that get written about in the local media, which it sounds almost like BS now. Like, you know what? None of that really matters if the check arrives. So,
Right.
I mean, let's just say that LIV made you a great offer, whatever that number is. I mean, how hard would it be for you to walk away from the tour life that you know?
Honestly, it wouldn't be that hard to walk away. And I'll tell you why. Is that it was very mind blowing when The year that I got injured, I had a partially torn tricep tendon. So having a great career up until then, never lost my card. Two wins on the PGA Tour, injured my right elbow, and all of a sudden, I'm on medical. I had to wait 6 months to start getting medical checks, and being ready to come back and playing in the confines of a medical status and being able to keep my card that year was extremely difficult. And so understanding that any injury that I have, and just as well as in any sport, could be the end of my career, and that I'm disposable, that basically it's next man up, someone else comes up. No one's really calling me and saying, hey, James, we really need you on this tour. Our tour's struggling without you, right? But understanding also that Tiger Woods, he's injured and the tour is still surviving and doing very well, that they're just going to find the next person, like we run in cycles. And so knowing kind of that any week now, any year that my PGA Tour could be over, whether I don't play well or I'm injured, to have guaranteed money is something that's really difficult to turn down. So I'm banking on myself that I'm going to stay healthy for the next 10 years, play on the Champions Tour, and do all that. But if there's a number out there that's basically going to pay all that money, and I got to be very careful with my words, but pay all that money up front to where if I do get injured, that I will still have the life that I live. I mean, you can see my house. It's not it doesn't look like a $15 million house, right? I got the smallest house on the block. I got a 2015 Hyundai Genesis in the garage. Like, I'm not driving Lamborghinis and stuff. Like, so $10 million is life changing. So, but for a guy like Dustin, $100 million might not be life changing because he already has $100 million. You know what I mean? So I feel like each person has their number of what really is life changing, and then being able to walk away from the game. I feel like is a legitimate question that a lot of PGA Tour players are asked.
Yeah, well, that's well said, and I appreciate your candor. And I think because golfers have such long careers, the fans don't think too much about how much injury can factor in a decision. But no doubt for Brooks and Bryson, that was certainly a factor. I mean, they've had serious injuries, and
right.
You see what happened to Will Zalatoris. I mean, that was the most expensive back injury in history, right? I mean, he's going to win the FedEx Cup maybe, and drops to 30th, and who knows what his future looks like. So it definitely. I think that's absolutely a legitimate concern, even if it's not really forefront for golf fans. But
right, and it's also like to be able, let's say, a couple years from now, if Brooks or Bryson had stayed on the PGA Tour and they were to have gotten injured, and they have a life or career-ending injury, right? They're going to regret it probably for a really long time. I'm not going to say the rest of their life because they do have made some really good investments, of not just taking the money. You know what I mean? And so hindsight's always 20/20. Yeah, if you're going to stay healthy for the next 20 years, by all means, stay on the PGA Tour, love to play on the PGA Tour, and just make a legacy for yourself. But if there's even that 1% chance that you feel like you're going to get injured or you have had injuries in the past, it's easier to take the guaranteed money than to take a chance on your body.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about these things. And, Twitter is so reductionist, and it's hard to fully express yourself. But I think the fans at home listening to this conversation will have a greater appreciation for your thoughtfulness and that you have ruminated on these things in a pretty deep way. So,
right. And one thing that I would like to say is that I absolutely love the PGA Tour. Right. I get a lot of Twitter hate saying, why don't you just join LIV? Why don't you, it seems like you hate the PGA Tour so much. And it's like, I don't hate the PGA Tour. It's like I play on the PGA Tour. How can someone hate the PGA Tour and play on the PGA Tour and play a full schedule of 28 events? To me, I don't understand it, right? And so I love what the PGA Tour is doing. There's so many great stories. I am grateful for the opportunities that I've gotten, the 2 tournament wins that I have had, and hopefully more throughout my career, being able to qualify for, a Ryder Cup or a President's Cup, definitely some goals of mine that I have. But I can be mad. I can love the PGA Tour and enjoy playing on the PGA Tour, but also question some of the things that they're doing in the background, right? I can question why money is going not more towards, the average to above average PGA Tour player and only concentrated on the top players. And I understand the whole aspect of it, but I can question these things, and I have an opinion. I have a right to do that, but it doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm just going to call up LIV and say, hey, I hate the PGA Tour. I want to leave. I love playing on tour. I love supporting these events. I love the fans that show up for it, and I plan on staying here for a really long time. So you're going to have to deal with me for a long time.
Part of loving something is you want it to be better. And patriotism is not just blindly following what you're told. It's questioning authority, and it's advocating for change. And I mean, you can love America, but you can want it to be better. It's the same with anything. So I think that's a very important point for you to make. So well, this was an edifying conversation. I feel like we should do this a little more often. Let's try and let's
For sure.
next time there's a reason to continue this discussion. Let's get back on here, because I think
Absolutely.
your perspective is definitely important for fans to hear. So James Hahn, thank you for doing this Fire Drill podcast. We'll wrap it up here. This is Alan Shipnuck. We'll be back in your ear soon. And speaking for all golf fans, James, I think we hope you play well, make that Ryder Cup team. I mean, that would be sweet. It's you've had quite a journey through golf, so I'm glad it's going to keep going. So
Thank you very
thank
much.
you
Thanks
again.
for giving me an opportunity to just kind of express myself, and not on the confines of Twitter. So thank you for
All
the,
right, it's
enjoyed it. Thank you, Alan.
absolutely all right.